We have a little bit different show today. We're excited to welcome in some in-studio guests here. We typically keep it pretty light in the first hour, like to have a little fun, me and Nick. We go back and forth and, and joke around a little bit. We'll do a little bit of that this morning as well, but we also have a very serious subject we wanted to get to. And to that end, we want to welcome in Holy Spirit Football Coach A.J. Russo and Dr. Barry Kaufman. He's a gastroenterologist. Did I say that correctly? Yeah. Here in Egg Harbor Township. So we kind of teased the show a little bit. We really didn't say what it was all about. We wanted to get people to tune in and listen. Obviously, AJ, whether you like it or not, you're a big name in South Jersey.
I don't know if I'd go that far, Dave. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Holy Spirit's obviously a very well-known program in high school football circles, and you've been coaching there for a while now. And give our audience some listening background on what you've been going through and why we're having this show today. I kind of want to let you tell the story.
Sure. First, I'd like to give you some props, though, Dave, for what you do with Glory Days Magazine and what you guys do here with this Saturday morning show for the local high school athletes. These student athletes, you provide them a forum to get some recognition that they truly deserve. And that's something that's been lacking in this area for a number of years, and you guys do a great job with that. So
appreciate it. Thanks, man.
The reason that Dr. Kaufman and I are here today is I want to explain a little bit about a little journey that I've been through for the past 6 months. And hopefully we'll be able to get some information out to some people that'll help them overcome some fears that they may have about some certain things, and also be prepared to help treat themselves with some things if they come down the line. So back in, I guess, my senior year in high school, I was diagnosed with a disease called ulcerative colitis. So for the last 37 years, I've been dealing with that disease. It's basically an inflammatory bowel disease that impacts has a huge impact on your life. Mm-hmm. So fortunately for me, I was able to hook up with Dr. Kaufman at Atlantic Gastroenterology. So they've been monitoring my situation for the past 37 years, and it's been very helpful. But part of that monitoring situation is getting annual colonoscopies. And I know a lot of people have some anxiety and some fears in reference to getting that procedure.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like the most comfortable thing in the world.
It's not, but I'll tell you what, it's the best nap you can get. They did do a good job of taking care of that. But the reason I'm saying that is back in November, I had one of my annual colonoscopies through Dr. Kaufman. And they found something, they found a polyp in there that was cancerous. So because of the early diagnosis of that, I was able to, I've been able to rebound pretty quickly. The cancer has been removed through surgical procedures, and everything's looking very good right now for me. But the one, I know Dr. Kaufman's going to talk about this a little bit. The key to that is finding things early, and having colonoscopies, like I said, is something that a lot of people have anxiety about. But it can really save your life, and I'm very happy that I've had the opportunity to do that, because I think it has saved my life.
Well, typically, Coach, and you know this as well as I do, men, more so men than women, men in their 40s and 50s in that age group, very stubborn, don't like to go to the doctor. I know my old man was, he would fear the doctor. He would hate going to the doctor anytime he had to, and that's changed a little bit more in the last 10 to 15, 20 years than it was back in the 80s and 90s, where everybody was just, if you don't go to the doctor, there's nothing wrong with you type of attitude. But nowadays, people are a little more willing, but it's still a hurdle to get people to do the things necessary to get the early screening, figure out if there is, because nobody wants to hear that diagnosis that you have cancer. It's almost like, gosh, if nobody tells me, then I don't have it. Is that sort of what you found with in your experience with friends you have or people in your community?
Well, and even with myself, yes. Yeah. I mean, it's not something you want to hear, and you do. Your mind puts yourself at ease by saying, well, if no one tells me I have it, then I'm not going to have it.
Yep.
But we all know that that's not true. So it's very important to make sure that you do get checked and take care of things when they do find something. There may be people that doctors tell them that they do have something wrong with them, but they continue to put that off because they're hoping that it'll resolve itself, and most of the time it does not. So if you are diagnosed with something, you should get it taken care of.
Now, what was your reaction when you heard that news? Because that's right in the middle of football playoffs. you guys were having a great postseason. You end up going to the state championship. And how did you handle all that medical news and things you had to do on the – because you're have to project this kind of tough guy image to your football players. You want to get them to perform for you, and you don't want to let them see anything's wrong with you personally. I mean, obviously you guys have a very good relationship at Holy Spirit with your players and your coaching staff, but that's if there's a worse time to have that diagnosis, I don't know what it is, but right in the middle of high school football playoffs.
Right. Well, I think my faith in God, my support from my family, and also the support that I got from Dr. Kaufman when he told me about the situation was very helpful. And as far as our team was concerned, I never mentioned anything to our team because of what you just said. We were in the midst of a playoff run. I didn't want them to be distracted. Obviously, I told our coaching staff about it because there were some doctor's visits that I had to have. I went up to Thomas Jefferson University Hospital. So there was times that I had to actually leave practice or miss some parts of the early practice because I was away getting at doctor's appointments.
Right.
But I truly believe that, my faith and family support and with Dr. Kaufman, that helped me overcome all that.
In case you're just joining us, waking up here on a Saturday morning, thanks for tuning into the South Jersey Sports Report. We have a couple special in-studio guests here, Holy Spirit football coach A.J. Russo and Dr. Barry Kaufman, gastroenterologist. We're talking about Coach Russo's recent diagnosis of colon cancer and trying to get people to understand how important it is to get that early screening. Dr. Kaufman, welcome into the show. Wanted to get your thoughts on Coach Russo and keeping one of the coaching stars in South Jersey healthy here. And I guess what was your initial interaction with Coach here, and how did that go? I mean, I'm sure it took a lot of testing and all that stuff to figure out what's going on.
Again, unfortunately, in my profession, I deal with this kind of thing a lot. And it's a wake-up moment for a person. They have to change their life plan.
Right.
And, whenever people are put to sleep for an exam, they're always thinking somewhere in the back of their mind, oh, what the heck? What's going to happen when I wake up? What's he going to tell me? And I understand that anxiety, really, having had tests myself, obviously. But I think in A.J.'s case, he was remarkably courageous in terms of trying to conquer this in the midst of continuing his stellar career. And it does require discipline, which is something a coach brings to a team and learns on his own personally. This is a case where discipline probably was very helpful,
right?
Because you could certainly break down and cry. I think he followed all the rules, even the tough ones, and he didn't, miss much more than a beat or two, which I think is great. It's a great example for others who have to go through a difficult thing. That's all I can say. It's just a great example for people to have to deal with the reality of it and get on with it,
Yeah. Well, I guess one of the biggest things that worked in Coach Russo's favor was that he did have a condition as a teenager that led to kind of annual testing and that kind of thing. So this came up as a regular course of inquiry into his health, but not. Some people might feel healthy when they're 35, 40, 45, and just not go through and do all the testing they should every year. And say, I feel great. I'm good. I went to the gym today. I ran. I haven't gotten sick in 6 months to a year. So what do you tell people to get them to understand that it's more than just a quick checkup or maybe one lab work to understand all these things that are happening to people nowadays, especially with all this cancer going on?
Yeah, well, I think it's true that Al's disease made him more likely to be screened frequently, because we know there's an increased risk of that, and it was sometimes hard to get him in because he has such a busy schedule.
Right.
But for the person of average risk, which means you don't have any symptoms and there's no family history in a first-degree relative, screening age for with colonoscopy now it starts at 45. It used to be 50 for Caucasians. And what we hope to do really is not find cancer. It's really not colon cancer screening. There's a precancerous abnormality called a polyp. Some people know what that is. There are different kinds of polyps. But in the colon, a polyp is frequently benign, but it could be transforming over years into cancer. So it doesn't cause symptoms. So if you say to yourself, I don't have symptoms, I don't need that.
Right.
The idea is to find it. It's in a place we can't see. It's not like on your skin where you say, oh, go to the guy and let him knock that off. if we find a polyp, we remove it, and we literally set the clock back to zero. Speaking of sports, we set the clock back to zero, which means we've removed something of risk, and then we follow you based on the interior characteristics of that. How often will I need it again? Maybe it'd be 3 years or 5 years. It's a prevention strategy, and it's proven effective over the past 30, 35 years since colonoscopy started. So the incidence of colon cancer is declining. The other advantage is that we'll find colon cancer occasionally earlier. So if you had colon cancer in early stage, 90% survival at 5 years. Pretty good. If it's second stage, which may not be associated with symptoms, still very high, 75% survival at 5 years. So there's every reason to want to know.
Right.
And if people are afraid of the idea of colonoscopy, and they are avoiding it a little bit with some new tests, one called Cologuard, which is a sophisticated stool test, which may be a valid screen for someone of average risk, meaning no family history. But colonoscopy boils down to two things. Take the preparation, and then when you get there, we're going to put you to sleep. You're going to be comfortable. You're going to wake up. You're not even remember you had it, and the sleep is very, very relaxing, such that you really feel like you've had a spa experience. And
Wow.
and when you wake up, I'd like to say, hey, I found 2 polyps. I removed them. I'll see you in the office in 6 or 8 weeks. We'll go over what they show pathologically. We'll decide when you should have this again. Go eat. That's it. And now we'll testify to the fact that that's been it up until this last one. That's been, well, when we had a lot more to talk about in the recovery area. But that's basically it. We want to make it, we're people too. Everybody in our facility, we work over at Access Surgery Center mostly, and also at Mainland Division of Atlantic Care. Everybody has had one. So when people say, oh, I don't want to take that, it's terrible, I say, well, I had it 3 times, so don't complain because I had it. So there's no point in complaining. It really is a life protection strategy, and that's all I can say. I mean, I think we've saved lives over years, and it's kind of a good feeling that way.
Coach Russo, if you're just joining us, we're here with Holy Spirit football coach A.J. Russo and Dr. Barry Kaufman talking about colon cancer. Coach, you had this diagnosis back in the fall. When you first got diagnosed, take me through that day. You're at the doctor's office, you get the diagnosis. He says, buddy, you got colon cancer. When you get home that night, tell me some of the thoughts that are just rumbling around your head as you're trying to get to sleep that night, that first night.
Well, first of all, you think about your family. I have two children. My daughter, Aaron's 24. My son, AJ's 21. So initially after Dr. Kaufman had spoken to me about it, obviously my first call was to my wife. So that was very important. But one of the things that Dr. Kaufman told me, and it kind of eased my mind, was that because of the annual colonoscopies, I knew that they caught this early. And that was key because I knew that down the road, things would be better.
Right.
So the thought process was, all right, well, I have to stay calm for my family. I got to explain it to them because I actually had a positive attitude towards this because of what Dr. Kaufman had told me. So, it was a little difficult to tell them, but they seemed to understand the situation because I was calm about it because I knew that the outcome was going to be positive, and I'm still looking forward. I'm still leaning in that direction. Everything's going very well. So I think that kind of helped a lot.
Did you blow the whistle, call a team meeting?
No. With the family? Oh, yeah. Well, actually, my daughter lives in Florida, so so it was a little difficult to do that. But we did. We got everybody on the phone and spoke to them about that.
Coach, take us through when the whole recovery process from your diagnosis to when you told your family, and then you just said yourself, you stayed so positive, and that's probably 90% of the battle is staying positive up mentally. Take us through that part of it, and then the recovery process to ultimately get to this point now where you're in pretty good shape now.
Yeah. Well, as far as one of the good things about this as well, and this is what eased my mind a little bit also, being an ulcerative colitis patient, I've been dealing with that for close to 37 years. And there's often times where that's not easy to deal with either. But Dr. Kaufman put me at ease when he spoke to me because, number one, the procedure that I was going to get was going to have my colon removed to get rid of the cancer. And he also told me that that's also going to get rid of the ulcerative colitis. So I knew at that point that, all right, I'm going to be getting rid of a disease that I've been dealing with for 37 years, and then also getting rid of this cancer that was in my body. So that was very helpful as well, because I knew there was a positive outcome about that as well. I'm sorry, I apologize about.
No, that's right. You're going on the right track.
Okay.
It was basically the whole recovery process, and considering that was you had to stay positive mentally that entire time. Because physically, I'm sure you can handle it, but mentally, I would say is probably the hardest part in this whole recovery process.
Well, and when you get diagnosed with something like this, you have to continue your life. You can't stop living, and that's one of the things that I talked to my family about as well. You can't feel pity for yourself. You know that you have something you're dealing with, and you put your hands in God and your doctors to make sure that everything can be, that the outcome's going to be fine. And Dr. Kaufman recommended that I go up to Thomas Jefferson. So I saw a surgeon up there, Dr. Benjamin Phillips, who's very similar to Dr. Kaufman. They're great guys, they have a great sense of humor, but they stay positive and they tell you the truth. And that's something you want people to be honest with you. So that was very helpful as well. And I think staying positive and making sure that you continue to live your life is important, because it's all about mental aspects. I mean, the physical things you're going to deal with, you're going to be able to get over them, with the help of medicine and healthy living. But that mental thing does get to you a little bit. But as long as you have, like I said, faith and family support, and obviously the support of the Holy Spirit community, which I have, everything seems to turn out fine, and that's the key to that: staying positive and making sure that you live your life and continue to move forward.
Spirit, Yosh in the shotgun, tight formation. He's going to fake it, looking to throw now to the end zone. That one is caught for a touchdown. Holy Spirit is on the board.
It's gonna be funky. How come all the pretty girls like you are taken, baby? I've been looking for someone like.
Welcome back into the South Jersey Sports Report here on 97.3 ESPN. Your host, Sully from Glory Days Magazine, along with my producer and co-host, Nick Costco. That was a little bit of was that your play-by-play there, Nick, from the state championship game?
That it was. I was there. Figured
bringing back some memories. We got Coach
AJ, Coach a bone.
We got Coach A.J. Russo from Holy Spirit Football in the house with Dr. Barry Kaufman, and always good to hear those play-by-play, Coach, of the state championship last year. I mean, obviously that was a tough loss to St. Joe, but what a great season for you guys. Let's talk a little football for a minute or two. And
sure.
What's it like coaching a state championship game? I mean, so many coaches, great coaches, never get a chance to get that far, and you've been there a couple times. It's such an amazing ride when you go on that postseason journey with these guys.
Yeah, it's great for our kids, for our fans, and for the Holy Spirit community that we had an opportunity to be there twice in the past 4 years. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to bring a title home, but hopefully that will change in the near future. It's funny you talk about the state championship last year. I know we played up at MetLife Stadium, and initially when, just to talk about this for a second, when they told us that obviously we were going to play St. Joe's at Hamilton, and both of us are going to be traveling 2 hours north to play a football game.
Right.
Initially our staff, we were like, why don't we just call the state and try and petition, maybe play at Rowan or something a little closer. So all along for that whole 2-week period when we knew we were going up there was a little anxiety about that. But I'll tell you what, when we got up there and they opened the gates, we went into the locker room, and our kids put their stuff down in the locker room. We had about 35 minutes before pregame was to start. So we told the kids, look, let's go out onto the field, take a look at it, just get comfortable, take pictures, whatever you got to do. And when we walked out into that stadium, the experience that those kids had, and even our coaching staff, I think that's one of the best things that the state of New Jersey has done to make sure that these games are all played at MetLife Stadium. I hope they continue to do that because it was a great experience for our players. And I think all the schools that played up there during that weekend or those 2 weekends had that same great experience. So I'm hoping the state continues to do that.
Anytime you can play in a professional stadium and see the locker rooms that these guys use, and when you get on that field, it's just it's overwhelming. I mean, you see these giant stands above you, and it is a really cool experience for the high school guys. We're talking with Holy Spirit football coach A.J. Russo. Dr. Barry Kaufman is in the house as well, talking about Coach Russo's recent diagnosis with colon cancer. So that's sort of the big subject of our show today here in the first hour. We also we'll mix in a little bit of football here. So if anybody wants to call in and ask any questions of Coach Russo or Dr. Barry Kaufman, give us a shout, 609-573-3776. That's 609-573-3776 if you want to give a holler. Call in, talk about some football or more importantly about colon cancer and the screening process. And Dr. Kaufman, take us through, if anybody out there is listening, what they need to do to get screened for not only colon cancer but other types of diseases. That is this an age thing? Should people in their 20s, early 30s be doing it, or is it more, hey, this is a post 40-year-old thing?
Well, it is an age thing, and that's based on statistics which show an increase beginning at 40, for God's sake.
Right.
So that's when screening should start in someone who has no family history. Now, if you have a family history, it could change the equation in terms of the age, because as I said, we don't want to find cancer. We want to find a precancerous abnormality and remove it.
Right.
So you got a lead time there. Might be a few years, might be 5 to 7 years, depending on your genetic risk. So right now, as I said, there's been a change in the screening age from 50 in average risk individuals down to 40 to 45.
Uh-huh.
You have to check with your insurance company and make sure they've acknowledged that, but the American Cancer Society has. And again, the idea comes from statistics which show about 10 or 11% of new diagnoses are people aged 40 to 50, which is pretty scary, I think.
Yeah, no doubt.
So I just want to emphasize that having symptoms is the last reason to have a colonoscopy.
Right.
We want to find something before you ever even know it's there. And if there's a precancerous growth, remove it through the scope so that you won't have to worry about that one.
Like a colonoscopy isn't something that would be part of a normal yearly physical or checkup?
Yeah, I think, again, most primary care physicians in this area, they're oriented around their own practices or Shore Memorial or whatever they call it, Shore Hospital and Atlantic Care, are really attuned to making sure primary care involves prevention. That's really the key note. Personalized medicine with prevention, which means somebody's going to add up your risk and tell you what you should do. And that's a little scary, obviously. You have to face your reality. It's not exactly watching HBO. but I think there's much more awareness now, thank God. I really do think there is. I think it's important for people to notice around them by asking their family and looking around whether or not they have more than average risk too.
How would you know if you're at risk, just based on somebody in your lineage that
Yes,
that had
right.
it, or how related to you do you have to be? Is it second cousin? Is it grandfather? What's more important?
The farther away, the less risk, but the younger, the more. So a second cousin who was 40, go talk to somebody. First degree relative with a polyp, that increases your odds ratio by 3 times.
Wow.
Means you should probably come in a little earlier than you would have because you're not average anymore. So if your dad or mom had polyps, you should be starting to calculate, when you're coming in. Probably should be between 40 and 45. And as I mentioned, African Americans seem to have more risk for reasons that are unclear. So even earlier. So if we're going to prevent this disease or catch it early, as we did in Al's case, because the best news for me was when they took that colon out and did the microscopics on it and found no disease outside that colon. That was like glorious,
Yeah, so you basically caught it in time where you could now, having your colon removed obviously is no walk in the park. It's not an easy thing, but like you said, the disease was contained in that area. So now, what's your status now, Coach? Are you disease free? What can we put the stamp of approval on that, or what?
Well, as far as colon cancer, yes, because the colon is no longer there. And I've had 2 surgeries since the initial surgery, and I have another surgery scheduled in May to do what they call I have an ileostomy right now. So in May they're going to do a reversal. They created a J pouch internally using the bottom portion of my small intestine. So in May they're going to hook that back up, and then I'll be pretty much back to normal as can be. So I got a little bit of
you get your plumbing all in order, right?
That's basically it. Yes, that is correct.
Any listeners out there who want to give a call in, it's 609-573-3776. You want to talk to Holy Spirit Coach A.J. Russo or Dr. Barry Kaufman. We're talking about colon cancer, the importance of early screening. If you're just joining us, Coach A.J. Russo of Holy Spirit Football had colon cancer found, I guess, last fall, and has now gone through procedure to get your colon removed. So all the cancer cells are now out of your body, and now it's another process of kind of rehooking everything up to where you can live normally. Is that what's your life going to be like now? Is it a normal life?
Oh yeah, I mean that's the one thing too. Even though there's a couple things that have changed with me, life is still normal, and that's, as we spoke earlier, that's important. You got to keep it as normal as possible, and actually, it's been that way. I went right back, went back to work as soon as I could. Continued to do the things that that I'm asked to do at work and at home. The only thing is I've been limited with what I can lift. I can only lift can't lift anything more than 10 pounds. So I can't work out. I can't do anything like that. So that's I dropped a little bit of weight as far as that's concerned. But at the end of the day, that's well worth it. And then after my surgery in May, I have about a 6-week stint for recovery, because it's all abdominal surgery.
Yeah,
so obviously,
tough, yeah.
Yeah, you're dealing with that. So after 6 weeks in May, I'll be able to get pretty much back to a normal regimen as far as working out and stuff like that. But that's really been the only limitation. Initially my diet had changed a little bit because, obviously once you have your colon removed, there's certain things that you can and cannot eat while your intestines start to wake up a little bit.
Right.
But I'm back to normal now. I can eat whatever I like. So everything's going good in that regard. But obviously you have to eat healthy, and you want to make sure you do everything you can to maintain your health, which is why I brought you these Dunkin' Donuts.
Right, yeah. I'm trying to drop a few pounds.
Have you seen Sully in the Island Gym before? He's back to almost sprinting now on the treadmill.
Yeah, right. So is your wife Rhonda giving you a hard time about? Oh, here's AJ, just wants more attention.
Absolutely. I mean, she does everything around the house anyway. So
She's great. I don't know if she puts up with you on a daily basis.
I don't either. I was very, very lucky to marry her. I'll tell you that.
Yep. Like they say, you outkick your coverage on that one.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
I guess it's been tough. Your daughter's down in Florida, correct?
Yes.
So she hasn't been around for I guess she was around a little bit over the holidays.
Yeah, we've been fortunate. So initially, she went to Florida State University,
right.
Graduated from there as an athletic training major, and then once she got out of school, she worked in Tallahassee at a local high school. And Tallahassee is not the easiest place in the world to get to. There's a small commuter airline there. So it's difficult. But now she recently relocated to the Tampa area. She lives in St. Petersburg, and she's working for the Florida Orthopedic Institute as an athletic trainer there. So with Spirit Airlines flying from AC to Tampa, she's actually been able to come up for a few weekends.
Oh, that's cool, yeah.
Which is nice. And we've actually gone down there and spent a few weekends down there in Florida also. So we've seen her more over the past 6 months than we did over the last 6 years. so it's been pretty good. And our son AJ's still local. He's going to Stockton. Yep. So he's been around as well. So like I said, having that close-knit family kind of helps out as also.
If you do want to call in and talk to Holy Spirit Football Coach A.J. Russo or Dr. Barry Kaufman, the number is 609-573-3776, 609-573-3776. And, Coach, we talked about this during the break. There's been a lot going on with Holy Spirit Football in terms of health-wise. Obviously, everyone knows what's going on with Coach Bill Walsh and the battle he's having with ALS. And you were a big-time supporter in his corner, and now it's kind of have the tables flipped as he kind of helped you. Him and his family kind of said, "Hey, now you're on the team of fighters." So
absolutely. I mean, and part of the positive attitude that I've had has come from drawing from the strength that Bill has. Bill is one of those guys that that continues to do everything that he can. He's fighting. He's doing a good job with that. And then I love Bill Walsh, his wife Cindy, and Kelly. Those guys have been great supporters of Holy Spirit, the community, and it's just they're a great family. And when Bill found out, obviously we're texting back and forth with each other, and obviously I won't get into the private conversations, but there was a lot of busting back and forth between the two of us.
I'm sure,
that.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the good things too. Like all our staff members, football staff members, when Bill was diagnosed, we stuck together and tried to keep life as simple as possible and as normal as possible. And that's what they're doing with me too. We're just keeping it normal, making sure that everything stays on an even keel, and that just makes everybody more comfortable, and it makes you kind of forget about the situation that you're in, and you continue to move forward with it.
Coach, it seems like the Holy Spirit community is very tight-knit. Obviously, when Coach Walsh was diagnosed with ALS, you guys it almost immediately went for the Walshies Warriors, and all of a sudden there's a flag football tournament in the summer. I know Sully and I were out there. We did the show live from the Holy Spirit football stadium a couple years ago when that started. Do you find that now that you especially with your diagnosis in your recovery over the last 6 months, do you find that the Holy Spirit community is even tighter and more is closer than you could have imagined before?
Well, it's always been tight, which is good, because anytime you go to Holy Spirit, it's got as a student at Holy Spirit, it's a different feeling than any other place, and it's kind of hard to describe. But it's important because we all do care about each other. It is one big family, and I know that sounds like a cliche, but when you're in the building, when you graduate from that building and you come back, a lot of things haven't changed. The building's, over 50 years old. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of love and compassion in that place. And that means a lot to everybody that walks in and out of those doors. And that's something I can truly say that Holy Spirit separates itself from a lot of other schools. There is something there about that school, and it is a close-knit family, and we always look after each other. And, and I think that stems from the community itself. And I know people that, like Bill and myself and other people that have had some issues, that support that we get from the Holy Spirit family does help a lot.
If you're just joining us here on the South Jersey Sports Report, we're talking with Holy Spirit football coach A.J. Russo, as well as Dr. Barry Kaufman, a gastroenterologist here in Egg Harbor Township, talking about the difficult subject to talk about, which is colon cancer. Coach Russo was diagnosed back in the fall with having colon cancer, has had his colon removed. So the cancer is now out of his body. And Dr. Kaufman, real quick, if there are people out there listening who are kind of woken up a little bit, literally and figuratively on a Saturday morning at 8:30, but if they're woken up to this about, hey, maybe I should really get checked out on this, how do they go about it? Can they just ask their primary doctor? What's the procedure in terms of getting a colonoscopy?
Yeah, for someone who...
These medical words are difficult to say.
Yeah, looking into the colon. So for someone who realizes they probably want that done, the best way to proceed would be through the primary care's office. I don't know that you have to go see the doctor. You could call and say, hey, why don't you set this up? I'm 48. I want to have it. And that's pretty much it. If you have other illnesses, those could influence the risk. For example, the risk is largely anesthesia. So if you have sleep apnea or something, we may need to put you through a few paces to make sure you'll tolerate the sleep medicine. But for the most part, that kind of primary access, meaning you don't have to have a consultation with a gastroenterologist to arrange a colonoscopy, is very much available. And I would say that there are people who call our practice and our surgery center, Access Surgery Center, and find a way to make arrangements as long as they can get us the most recent lab work they had and that kind of stuff. So there's very little in the way of an obstacle for someone who really wants it. I can't imagine that we couldn't set that up for you. And if we have any doubts about your physical health, we'll have you come in and check you out.
What prevents people from getting these types of screenings? Do they just not think about it on a 6 month to a yearly basis when they're getting their other, say somebody gets a yearly physical? Is it not something that crosses their mind to say, hey, maybe I should go and get this checked out?
I think awareness is something that comes and goes. As you know, when celebrities or public figures end up having a disease, there's an immediate interest in it. And
right.
Now there's so much social media that you can hardly ignore it. And I think that has been beneficial generally for early diagnosis. But regular working people like me and you, it means I have to take a day off, and I was going to go away. And so there are a lot of excuses you can make to yourself not to have it. I would just simply emphasize the very significant preventive aspects of this, and that the incidence of colon cancer has dropped dramatically past 30 years or so, which I think is pretty remarkable. There's no other cancer like that, actually. So it's still colorectal cancer. Rectum is included in there. Is the second or third most common cause of cancer in men and women together. There's 120,000 new cases a year.
Wow.
That's bad, I think, especially in the era where we could find a polyp and remove it. And 50 or 55,000 people die from it every year. So when you think about all that prevention you could do, it's worth the inconvenience of finding out how you can arrange this.
Well, if you don't do all that prevention and you wake up one day and you have stage 2 colon cancer, I mean, you've
lost 30% chance of survival
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But I thought Al might want to comment about his journey, his hospital journey. Even though he's at Jefferson, I think it's very interesting to describe how little time he spent in a hospital for such a complicated surgery. That's today. So even the most intimidating things, oh my God, having several operations, really are kind of robotic and minimally invasive, and you're in and out of the hospital in like 2 days, and they don't have to give you any pain medicine. He wouldn't take it anyway. but really, even when there's catastrophic news, the potential in 2019 to deal with it is dramatically better than it was even 10 years ago.
Right.
That's also very encouraging, really.
Absolutely. December 17th is when I had my colon removed, and it's all laparoscopic surgery. And I had it at 6 a.m. on December 17th, and I was out of the hospital on December 19th.
Wow.
And just like now and I'm going to reference getting your ACL replaced. When you get knee surgery, you wake up and they have you moving your knee and doing stuff.
Yeah.
When I woke up from my surgery that first day, they had me walking in the hallways, making sure that I continued to move my body and continued to grow. And a lot of that is because of the laparoscopic surgery. It's minimally evasive, and it works out very well. So you're going in thinking I'm going to have this major surgery, and it is a major surgery. There's nothing to frown upon about that. But because of the major technology advances, you bounce back pretty quickly. And hopefully, if you go into the surgery in pretty decent shape, you can get out a little bit better shape as well.
I was just going to say, too, the medical advances, and Dr. Kaufman, you could probably speak to this, too. The medical advances are so great particularly in this century. And, Coach, you just mentioned it. It's like going in for an ACL surgery almost. You're doing something the very next day you wake up. Dr. Kaufman, when Coach speaks to that, I mean, is it really that common now, even with a surgery such as that's as serious as this, as removing a cancerous polyp, and then all of a sudden you're moving the next day?
Yeah, I think the age of mechanization, digitalization, artificial intelligence, robotics has made a big difference. And I remember people had surgery in Mount Sinai in New York, like you had 20 years ago. Man, they were in the hospital for 6 weeks.
Wow.
And their outcomes weren't as good. So we're definitely tremendously advanced and advantaged in that sense. Of course, still prevention is what you want to do, right? But there's reasons to be more positive and less fearful if you do have a bad diagnosis. And this is human progress,
Definitely. Coach Russo from Holy Spirit Football is here, along with Dr. Barry Kaufman, talking about colon cancer, and we do have to break here in just a couple of minutes. But, Coach, before we let you get back to your Saturday activities, wanted to have you speak to this for just a minute or two. Your position as head coach of Holy Spirit Football, a very well-known football program in South Jersey, and also your contacts with all the other coaches in South Jersey, how important is that to get the word out about this? I mean, you have a really great platform along with ALS, colon cancer, some of the other things that some of the students have gone through. High school sports really does provide a great platform to get the message out about all this stuff, and speak to that a little bit about why it's important for you as a leader in the community of young men and women to show that you're being proactive about this and reach out to other programs throughout South Jersey and other sports teams and Twitter, all that stuff, to be as involved as you are with this kind of stuff. It's important, and you get to see people respond because of that Spartan emblem on your shirt.
Right. Well, one of the things that obviously when you're diagnosed with something like this, it's a private matter. But the ability to try and make a difference with other people's lives, I think, is important, which is why I took the opportunity to, and I thank you for this,
no
to allow Dr. Kaufman and I to come on to discuss this. Being in a position where I could hopefully, and Dr. Kaufman, I could hopefully help somebody who may not decide to get a colonoscopy now think about doing that, and hopefully can save their lives like Dr. Kaufman was able to save mine. And I think that's important. And, I'm hoping that people will hear this and make sure that, they take care of anything or have and alleviate any fears or doubts that they have about getting a procedure like a colonoscopy to help maybe possibly, remove a situation from your life that could be life threatening.
I believe, Nick, we have a caller on the line. 1 second. All right. Hello.
Yeah, how are you? I have a
Tim from Marmora.
Dr.
Tim from Marmora join us.
Yes,
Thanks for calling in, Tim. What's your question for Coach Russo or Dr. Kaufman?
Well, it's forwarded to Dr. Kaufman. I'm a big fan and supporter of colonoscopies. I've had several myself. They found a few polyps and removed them, but to me it looks like a real life-saving procedure. And I was wondering if it just seems like one of those procedures that everyone should basically have. And I was wondering if Dr. Kaufman ever sees a time coming down the road where, I don't know how insurance factors into colonoscopies, and where everyone would be able to go out and have a colonoscopy, because I've known so many people that have died from colon cancer, and then on the other hand, it seems like such a easy and efficient way to save lives. I was just curious on Dr. Kaufman's thoughts about that.
Appreciate it, Tim. We will pose that question to the doctor. Dr. Tim from Marmora wants to know, will colonoscopy ever be a real simple part of a healthcare package that people can just make it part of their yearly physical? Or
I think we're pretty close to that. And if, as I said in my earlier comments, if someone decides they want to have it done and they meet the criteria age-wise or risk-wise, and they're having a problem, call our practice. We will go hand-to-hand combat for you and make sure that we can get your insurer to take care of it. And even if you're not insured, there are mechanisms in this state. There's money in subsidizing colon cancer screening,
right,
put aside by the state during the Christie administration, and we can fight for you to make sure that the procedure and its ancillaries, anesthesia, are paid for. So there's really no reason, if you wanted it, to not have it done.
Even now, you're saying even now there's not a huge obstacle in getting this done. It's not a. Is it covered by most insurance?
It's covered by all insurance, pretty much. Again, there's ways and means when it comes to insurance. God knows.
And if you don't have insurance, there's ways you can get it.
If you don't have insurance and you otherwise are a candidate for it, meaning you're of age or you have a family history and risk, we can get it. We can get it done. There's some paperwork, but we can get it done. I think the biggest obstacle is myth, anxiety.
Yeah,
which those are normal human things. I tell people, if you're not worried, you're probably dead. Because that's just the way life is, and we don't know the plan, do we, Al?
Not at all.
That's why we get kind of faithful every once in a while. So this is one way you can definitely prevent something that can be catastrophic to you and your family. So, yeah, it's an investment in time, and you probably lose a day's work. We can write a work excuse for you, but it's proven definitely to be valuable to the human race. I'm talking about worldwide here.
Sure. Guys, we're up against the break here. I wanted to thank you for taking some of your time on Saturday morning to come in and talk about this really important subject, Dr. Barry Kaufman and head football coach at Holy Spirit, A.J. Russo. Guys, really appreciate your time this morning, and hopefully this will have an impact on some listeners out there to go and get checked for get their colonoscopy and get the ball moving on some better health.
Sully, since I'm on, I have to give a shout-out to Morgan Murphy, my granddaughter, who just had her bat mitzvah, but in the age of diversity is going to Holy Spirit next year.
All right.
So
there you go.
I've been forced to put a plug in. I'm not sure. I think she's more
all religions.
She's an
actress. We're all on the same team.
But I think that shows something about Holy Spirit.